It's Liz Hirsh Naftali. Welcome to the Capital Coffee Connection podcast. And today I'm having virtual coffee with Congressman Don Bacon from Nebraska. And I just want to say thank you and welcome. And I am looking forward to having a conversation with you because the purpose of this podcast is to just really get to know our leaders. It is not about being a Democrat or Republican or where you are necessarily from, but just to get to know you for who you are, your heart, your humanity. And I am looking forward to getting to know more about you. I met you last year at an ADL dinner and we started speaking. And we were there because we were talking about fighting hate, fighting anti-Semitism, but fighting hate. And for me, this podcast is really about how we talk to each other and how we find the better in each other and work together. So thank you so much for being here.
Well, thank you, Liz. And this is the virtual Don Bacon. The real one's out doing something else right now. But I'm the better version of Don Bacon.
Well, we're happy to have this version, and we look forward to learning about you. So thank you. And I know that you are home in Nebraska today. And so tell us a little bit about Nebraska. What makes Nebraska special?
I did 30 years in the Air Force, 16 assignments. I lived in 4 different continents. And I lived coast to coast in America and some places in the middle. And our favorite place, when it was all said and done, was Omaha. Now, if you've never been to Omaha, it sounds boring unless you've been here, because not many people in Omaha, they think of Cornhuskers and steaks and things like that. But it's really, I think, defined by a slogan called Nebraska Nice. It's the good life. People are very nice to each other here. It's a family city. It's a family state. And you're good to your neighbors. So the people are very kind and generous. And when I was stationed at Offutt, the business community was so generous to all the military on base. I mean, all of our gym equipment was donated. Our running track was donated. I could just go on and on. And so the community was just very kind and very generous. It's the fastest growing economy in America. It was running at about 9% GDP growth this last year, which is, if the whole country was growing at 9%, we would not have a financial problem right now, or a deficit problem. Also, Forbes rates us the number 1 city to live in, Omaha. And it's just mainly because of the people. Great healthcare, great educational systems, airport right here. I mean, you just got it all right here in Omaha. It's a fantastic. Beyond that, crime is going down. So that's also good. Washington posted an article on why is Omaha doing so much better than other big cities when it comes to crime. And it's a good read. I'll just close on this part. We have 3 or 4 main industries. We're big on agribusiness because of our huge agriculture state. We're a huge transportation hub with Union Pacific right here. We have a division headquarters of the Burlington Railroad. We have some of the largest trucking companies right here. And thirdly, we're a financial hub. We have the largest private bank in the country right here. And we have a lot of insurance companies that are headquartered here. So you got 3 really main industries, and it really provides a lot of opportunity if you're living in this area.
Well, thank you. Thanks for sharing that. Because I also know that you actually were born in Illinois. You were born on a farm, and I'd love for you to share with us what it was like growing up and your family and your parents and what it was like, and then what school was like, just so people can get an understanding of where you come from.
So I was raised in Momence, Illinois, which is about 60 miles south of Chicago. It's right in the heart of corn and soybeans. So I lived on a farm, corn and soybeans. We had beef cattle. My grandparents had a house on the farm. I had an uncle and his wife had a house on the farm, and my aunt and her 3 kids lived on the farm. So we had 4 houses on the farm. But I worked on the farm the most of all the grandkids. So I was primarily worked for my uncle and my grandpa. We baled hay every summer, like 4 cuttings a year. I fed the animals. I planted the fields. I did all the work on the farm. I did that till I was 21 years old. So I would say I had a lot of good in this, maybe a little bad, and I'll go to the bad next. But the good was I was very close to my grandparents, my uncle, and working on the farm taught me a lot of good personal traits, hard work, honesty, and I learned how to be a good boss. My uncle was my boss, and he was really the prototype for me in the Air Force, how I wanted to treat people. The way he treated me was what I wanted to do to other people in a good way. So that was all the good stuff. I say on the bad side, my mom and dad got divorced when I was 13. And my dad remarried, and my stepmom had issues with mental health. So I had to deal with a little bit of some family things that we had to overcome. I ended up being the oldest of 9 kids. between
Oh, wow.
the two families. But I have fond memories of living on the farm, working on the farm. I had a little dirt bike, got a snowmobile, and I was very close to my cousins, and I walked just a yard away, and I had all my best friends right there.
Well, I'll tell you, I didn't grow up on a farm in Illinois, but my parents had a little ranch and I had a little dirt bike also. And so when you said the dirt bike, I was like, it was a little Honda and it was my
Yeah,
brother's and then it became mine. And it was one of my favorite things to do was to drive around on this bike. So
I
I can
started out
relate
with a
to that.
Honda 75, an XR
I,
75.
I think ours was pretty close. I'm going to send you a
Right.
photo. We'll match up photos. So talk about school because, you know, everybody had teachers and mentors. And one of the things I find fascinating are the teachers that saw our leaders early on as young people and inspired them. And most of the people have had one or two teachers or administrators that really still to this day are a big influence or somebody that they think back to mentored them and gave them the power to do what they do now.
Well, I remember all my teachers real well. My first grade teacher and my second grade teacher, I kept in contact with. They both lived to be about 100 years old. And
Wow.
so I would visit them when I was a lieutenant colonel, a colonel in the military. And so good memories of my teachers. It's interesting. I was really good at math in grade school and junior high. And then when we got into the higher math, I lost interest in it. And I found out that what I was really good at was current events, history. I like it. I just enjoy history. I like current events. I like geography. And so history became sort of my favorite topic. And we played games on current events. And I was always the first to my class on current events because I read the paper. And
Right.
junior high, I was reading the newspaper, right? And I was reading also U.S. News and World Events or U.S. News and World Report, that
Right.
magazine. I was also getting Human Events. My dad was a conservative newspaper back then, so I read all of that in junior high and did all the way till college. And I could tell. I mean, the teachers would tell me, I have you. This is your area of interest. Obviously, you love current events and history, but I would tell you, I didn't really internalize that feedback because my dad was a CPA, and I always thought maybe I would be a CPA because I liked the fact that he had 4 stores and he was driving a nice car and had nice suits. But in reality, my interest was history and political science and not accounting. I figured that out when I went to college. So went to college, I took accounting. I go, no thanks.
That is one of the things that I've also been hearing over and over is like reading the newspaper. And even though today we don't necessarily have physical newspapers, you can
Hmm.
still, as a young person, get news and get correct news that's factual. And it is part of the educational process that I think is sometimes missing. So I'm happy to hear that that was part of what you had. And then also, and I want to say thank you because you served our country for 29, almost 30 years in the Air Force. And you talked about like your grandparents and your uncle and what they gave you and what you brought to that service. What does that service mean to you? And in terms of how then you now are a congressperson leading in Nebraska and throughout our country?
But I enjoyed defending this great country. That's what motivated me to get in. First of all, I needed a career, and I thought I was meant to probably be in the military because I love military history. So I thought I was probably made to go that way. But serving our country and defending it has high meaning. Also, I worked with great people. I think that's what kept me in. I was just shy of 30 years by like 5 months, 29 years and 7 months, something like that. But it was the people that kept me in because they were great. They were selfless, hardworking, by and large, 99% very honest. And when you find a dishonest person, you kick them out.
Yeah.
And that's what we do. And I learned a lot. I learned a lot about nuclear deterrence. I was in the electronic warfare career field as well. But I got to lead. I got to command 5 times, and that was probably my favorite part of being in the military. And I tried to remember my uncle was a good listener. He never yelled. He'd let you know what the expectations were, give you feedback, and he was the role model for me to how to be a good supervisor and be a good commander.
Now you have an amazing wife Angie.
Hmm.
And the reason why I talk about amazing wife is because you also give credit and you understand that you would not have been able to do what you've done in public life and in the military if it weren't for having an incredible support. And I'd love for you to just talk a little bit about that and the fact that you're also the father of 4 and grandfather of 8, I believe,
Yep.
and how that works and what that means to you.
Well, if you're gonna make general and be commander, you put some intensity behind it. You work hard. I could not have done that and also be a dad without a very supportive wife. My wife obviously compensated for me by when raising the 4 kids. 2 we had when we were young, then we adopted 2. And my daughter, who's adopted, she lives 10 minutes away. She's a great mom, a great wife, and she's been a real blessing. And my son lives in Fairfax, but I get to see him periodically when I'm out in DC. But my wife really, she invested most of those our 4 kids, and we moved 16 times. She made that possible,
Wait,
and
16? You said 16 times?
16 times we moved into the military.
Wow.
So I had lived in 4 continents. I had 16 places all over the world. So yeah, we could have done it. In fact, the truth of the matter is, when I met my wife, I was a B student with not a lot of. I was more into having fun with my friends. Wasn't very serious. And when I met her and I got serious, I got to my A game. I started working hard. Okay, I need to figure out how I'm going to take care of a family down the road. And so really my wife turned me in from a B student to an A student. And I think I became a lot more focused life and not just having fun.
I love it. And your grandkids, they live nearby or they live far apart?
They're all 20 minutes away, within 20.
Yeah,
Some are 10, and
that's
they're
amazing.
great. I got 5 granddaughters, and they like doing dress up, and they like reading books and playing games. And my 3 boys like to fight, and they like to fight me. So it's almost a full-time wrestling match when they're over.
I love that. I love that. So I also ask this question across the board, which is, what is the worst advice you've ever received and the best advice you've received?
Maybe I'll start with the best. I still think having a good work ethic, and having a strong character and treating people right, those 3 things are the keys to success. I know this sounds pretty basic, but I think it works. If you work hard, if you're honest, and you're selfless, which is character, and if you treat people decently, you're gonna do well in whatever job is. People want that kind of person in their company, or they want to work for that kind of person. And so I think I would say one of the best advice that made a real difference in my life, and it just sticks out right now, is I was a captain, and I thought maybe I'd make lieutenant colonel. And this colonel that was going on to make general, and he ended up retiring as a 2-star, but we knew he was going to make general. And I was his aide or his exec. And he goes, "Hey, Don, you can make general. Your records are that good, and you got that ability, but you got to get that master's degree done, because otherwise you're not going to make general, or you won't even make major. But you got to get it done. If you get your master's degree done early, you're going to be on track for general." And I took his advice and did, and I ended up making general. But that was the first person to ever tell me that I could maybe make general, and it changed my horizon or my outlook where I was going.
Right.
I was setting my sights a little too small, and he let me know, hey, you can do a lot more than what you think you can do. Everybody gets some bad advice. I remember going through officer training school, and they would teach you we want you to be tough, and it's all right to yell and scream a little bit. I found that yelling's never effective. And another piece of advice I received, I remember when I took over my first squadron, commanded my first squadron, I was told to make insignificant changes just to show that you're the new boss. Like change the furniture, change things
Right.
around, and just to show that you're the new guy. And I didn't do it. Because I guess I want to be more serious. I want people to know when I'm doing something, I got it for good reasons. I'll never forget this guy telling me, change all the furniture around and do this, that, because you want to show them who's in charge. And thankfully I didn't follow the advice, because didn't think it was smart.
Yeah, it's so interesting because, and I'm sure when you speak with young people or others now, that the advice you give them is and you said it, which is, it's easy to be kind. It's easy to be nice,
Hmm.
but it's also great to be able to have somebody see you and that general saw you, or that you could have the potential. Didn't mean that you had to then become a general, but it just gave you the inspiration and the aspiration to work harder, and that someone saw the benefits and who you could be. And I like that so much.
Yeah, I changed my sights from here, and I raised them up after he talked to me. So, oh, really? I
Yeah.
can maybe make general. And it's like a little bit of a slap to me, right? I go, okay, woke me up.
Yeah. That wake up. Look, your wife woke you up. She made you a better student, a
Yep.
better person, a general. Like, we have to have people along the way that are here to help us. So I love that. And look, I hope that this advice and these things go to people that are listening across our country, across our world, and they say, you know what? I can see myself in that position, and I can see myself needing to push myself further. So thank you for sharing
Yeah.
that.
I did have another bad advice come to mind. I had a pastor, I love him, he's a good pastor, and he was a good man. But he told me if I worked over 8 hours, it was I don't think he used the word a sin, but it's nobody needs to work more than 8 hours. And that's so contrary to the advice I received growing up, that there are times, there's seasons in your life where you gotta work longer hours. If you wanna be the best, at some profession, you're gonna have to there's times you gotta invest a lot more time in that. And so I remember that not being advice that I liked either.
Yeah, it's an important one. Now we're going to switch to really just to get know you and basic level. Dawn, what is makes you tick? And they're rapid questions and love to get to know you. So answer as best as you wish. And
I
I hope
haven't
it's
got
a
them
fun
early, so
part.
I don't know what they are.
Okay, let's see how it goes. Favorite sound?
I like hearing birds chirping. I have lots of birds around my house. I like taking a nap on my porch, and I love hearing all the beautiful noises. God is a creative God.
I love that. Favorite color?
Oh, purple right now, but it has changed. Used to be red.
Okay. Favorite smell?
Peach pie.
Who's your biggest cheerleader?
Probably my sons, I think, but I've had a lot of good supporters, so it's hard to narrow it down.
What is your favorite sports team or teams?
Chicago Cubs, Chicago Bears, and Nebraska Cornhuskers.
Okay. And just tell me the Nebraska Cornhuskers, what sport is that?
Oh,
Sorry to be
football, but I also like the volleyball, and I guess those are my 2 favorite ones for Nebraska, football and volleyball.
okay, good. Did you play volleyball, by the way, when you were young?
No, but the women's volleyball here is the best in the country. They've won a lot of NCAA championships. Every year, they're in the Final Four, so it's been fun to watch them.
Yeah, volleyball's an amazing sport. Do you have a favorite meal?
I would say I used to really like a T-bone steak, but if I could go back a little bit, my mom's stuffed cabbages and stuffed peppers were still my favorite.
Beautiful. Where was your mom from, by the way?
She was raised in south of Chicago, and she had a Hungarian dad and a Norwegian mom. Stuffed cabbages and peppers were all Hungarian recipes.
Right. That's why I figured there was something European in this in that stuffed cabbage. My grandparents came from Russia and the Soviet Union, and one of the things my grandmother made was a lot of stuffed cabbage.
Yeah, they're especially with sauerkraut in their tomatoes. That's really good.
Yeah, yeah. And how about a favorite dessert?
Oh, peach pie.
It goes back to the peach pie. Okay,
Yeah.
good. And I have a funny question. When you were growing up, what TV shows did you watch?
Well, I remember liking Star Trek, the original Star Trek. Happy
Right.
Days was a good show. Those are probably
Yeah,
my 2 favorites. I enjoyed like Lost in Space. My favorite cartoon was Scooby Doo.
I love that.
Okay.
Okay. I watched a lot of Scooby Doo. My brother loved it. So I got you on that one. Do you have a favorite book that you reading now or that you read in the past?
I try to read the Bible every day, so that's most people say, "Oh, yeah, that doesn't count." But the Bible is the most important book out there, and I try to read 4 chapters every day if I can as part of my devotions. But I think beyond that, my favorite like book on leadership was Lincoln on Leadership. I thought that I've always enjoyed that book. It's sort of my style. I enjoyed the book Good to Great, how to build great teams. But I think my favorite auto or not my favorite biography was Alexander Hamilton by Ron Chernow, and that's what they made the play Hamilton based on
Oh,
that
wow.
book. And
Yeah.
so I have a lot. I try to read a book all the time. I just finished Fight, which was the story of the 2024 presidential election, and then before that, I wrote a book on the Reformation, just trying to understand what happened there. And then I finished a book on the Magna Carta recently. I want to
Wow.
understand what that was all about.
Okay. So the kid who was reading newspapers and a history buff and is still doing that.
Yes.
I love that. I love it. Do you have time to work out?
Yeah, I try to get on my treadmill and do 3.5 miles. And then, so I try to do that every morning, or I'm going to probably do it after this interview because had an
Okay, good.
early day today. So I'll probably get on the treadmill here a little bit. But I know I need to do more weights. I have not been good on that, but been working hard to keep my lungs going. And
Good.
in the job I'm in, it's hard to stay skinny. There's a free glass of wine like every night, and there's always free food. And it's not really made for a healthy lifestyle.
It's interesting. People don't know that and that you're running all the time.
Yep. Yeah.
I mean, literally
Run
running
to
all
eat.
the time.
A run to eat and run to drink, I guess.
Okay, good. Run to eat, run to, yeah, it's good. Okay, so when you work out, do you listen to music?
I don't really put on news. I used to listen to music. I have a good music device, but I haven't been using it lately. No, I just turn on the news and go at it.
Yeah. Do you have a favorite household chore?
I like mowing the grass. That's not really household, but mowing the grass. I have a riding lawnmower now, so I can veg out and mow my yard.
And what is Dawn's superpower?
Faith. In the end, I know there's a God, and I pray. And I can see that God has answered a lot of prayers in my life, and even when it's not answered, I know God's in charge. So I have hope and a purpose through my faith in God. I got hope that I have eternal life and that I'm in God's hands, and I got a purpose. I have the Ten Commandments, and I know that I'm supposed to live a life in a certain way. So I feel like my faith has given me hope and purpose.
That's really special. It kind of brings me to my last question, which is what brings you joy and what is joy to you, but what brings you joy? And if you are joyful, which I think you are, how do you share that and what does that mean to others?
I think most of my joy is having an impact when you get something done and you make a difference. When I look at some of the things we've done in Congress, it's going to be generational impact, whether it's infrastructure here in Omaha. I got the quality of life legislation with 29 recommendations for the military men and women, how to improve their quality of life. So I think I get a lot of my motivation on getting something done and making an impact. I think really my great joy though is feeling appreciated when a grandkid, like I had one grandchild says, "Grandpa, when are you going to retire? I want to spend more time with you." That gave me joy. So,
That's
but
beautiful.
feeling appreciated, is probably there's a book called Love Languages, and I think mine is wanting to be appreciated and have people think I made a difference.
And one of the things I learned about you and what I did in researching is that you are a leader that believes in something and does it. And you don't do what everybody else does. You do what you believe. And from what you've just said, I now understand from where that comes. Because sometimes you can look on the computer and you can just see the list of accomplishments. But in your case, what I didn't understand and now I do get is that it is really coming from you internally about what you believe and what you believe is the best for the people in Nebraska, but what is best for, I think, all people. And that's a beautiful thing as a leader to be having that as your North Star.
We have too many people today. It's being on a team, and you can't deviate from your team. You got to be totally supportive of your team. You got to totally fight the other team, even if in a situation where that other team may be right, or in times our own team may be wrong. And I've always felt like that's not my priority. My priority is being a follower as a Christian, being an American, and that should supersede any of the partisan stuff that we do. Now, I'm fundamentally more Republican, I'm a conservative, but it's more important to try to do what's right than be on a winning team. Uh, Standing for the right stuff is more important. And I feel I read a good book by Rabbi Sachs called Morality. In fact, a Jewish lady, American lady in Denver, heard me speak, and she came up and she sent me the book. She says, "You need to read this book because this guy wrote what you're saying." And he says, in a Judeo-Christian world, it's important to do what's right. In a post-Judeo-Christian world, it's more about being on a winning team. And it really stuck out to me because I go, because I see it. It's a truth that I see every day.
I'm going to end on that, which is thank you. And one last piece, which is, and you said it in the beginning, to be kind, to be nice. And I think that is a simple thing that I always try to leave people who are listening with some message about who you are. And you're a kind person, you're a nice person. And that is something that I take
Thank
with
you.
me. And I hope others will too, because it isn't hard to be kind or nice, but it goes a long way.
The golden rule is a great rule.
Exactly. Well, thank you, and
Thank
go
you.
work out. And I hope we meet again soon and we meet in person. And I just really appreciate this time and appreciate you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, it's Liz. Please join me every Tuesday for coffee to talk about heart and humanity with our elected leaders. Remember to hit subscribe to get an alert when a new episode is live and for exclusive content. Ciao.